Welcome back to Tech Forge, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. And if you're like me and you watch a lot of YouTube, especially TechTube channels, then you would have noticed during the NVIDIA RTX launch that quite a lot of the real big boys, like Linus, Jay's 2 Cents, Gamers Nexus, there was Paul from Paul's Hardware, Brian Stroh from BPS Customs had a hand in it. They all sort of got together in this little bit of an overclocking battle using 3D Mark TimeSpy. Of course, using RTX 2080 Ti's and Intel 7980XE processors, of course. Now, that was all a lot of fun to watch. I really enjoyed it. And recently I was watching a video by Chris over at The Good Old Gamer. His video will be linked in the description below, where he got his new test rig, which is a Ryzen 5 2600X with 16GB of 3000 MHz RAM, and his R9 Fury Nano graphics card. And he put it through its paces in 3D Mark Firestrike, Firestrike Extreme, and also TimeSpy. Now, at the end of the video, he welcomed everyone to have a bit of a crack at the scores, especially if you have those same configurations. We don't exactly have that same configuration, but we are a little bit similar. We do have the Ryzen 5 1600, so the previous generation down and one SKU across. We have 16GB of RAM, although it's slightly faster at 3200 MHz. And of course, we're rocking the GTX 980ti, which was a little bit faster, one might say, back in the day when they launched. Of course, the Fury architecture has aged quite well. It's performing well above what it did when it was launched, so it's a lot closer these days to the Maxwell 980 and 980ti than it used to be. So for the run today, I want to compare scores in 3D Mark Firestrike Extreme, and the reason for that is because the GTX 980ti and the R9 Fury are still excellent cards for 1440p, and that's where 3D Mark Firestrike Extreme aims at. It's a 1440p test. So the results over at Good Old Gamer was Chris's system managed to score 7,979 points. You can see during some of the runs that the R5 2600X was turboing up to 4,200 MHz when it was required. And I'm assuming a little bit here, but during the CPU loaded sections, I'm assuming that his 2600X was running around about 4 to 4.1 GHz. The 2600X was, of course, cooled by the Wraith Prism cooler, which is a fantastic cooler for a 2700X. So for a 2600X, it's more than enough. If you want to know how good the Prism cooler is for these processors, then I suggest you check out our 2700X coverage, specifically the video where we managed to hit 1901 Cinebench points on the Wraith Prism cooler. I'll link that in the description below. So Chris managed to overclock his R9 Fury to 1130 MHz. Didn't really get a memory overclock on that, but the core clock really does help since those things have a lot of bandwidth to begin with. But that's enough about Chris's system. Let's see what Hot Fuzz can do. So before we run Firestrike Extreme, I just want to make sure everyone's certain that we're in stock settings and that I'm using the current driver at the time, 416.34. Didn't go for something like 385.52, I think it is, which is a really good driver for Firestrike on my card. Let's run it, see what happens. And drum roll please, 8,314 points, 8,500 graphics, 18,500 physics, and 4,000 combined score. Not bad, not bad. Let's go and have a look at the two scores side by side. So if my math is correct, and it very rarely is, that's around about a 335 point difference. Now, if we have a look at these detailed score breakdowns, we've got 4.2% overall, as we've just discussed. Now, the graphics score. This is where everyone would have thought the Fury Nano would have been absolutely blown away by the stock 980 Ti. However, we're only seeing a 1.8% difference. Looking at the graphics test 1 and 2 results, 9.5% to the 980 Ti in graphics test 1, but a 3.4% deficit in graphics test 2. That leads me to believe that Graphics Test 2 has a bit higher weighting than Graphics Test 1 because 3.4% deficit, 9.5% win doesn't equal a 1.8% win. Also, with the results in Graphics Test 2, I'm thinking that test is very heavily memory bandwidth dependent because that is where the Fury Nano has it over the 980 Ti. Lastly, let's have a look at the physics score. 2.8% win to the R9 1600 at 4 GHz. That was a little bit of a shock. I was thinking it'd be fairly even there with the IPC increase on the 2600X, roughly equivalent clock speeds, but a slight memory advantage to the R9 1600. It must come into play more than I'm aware. So that was a very pleasing result there, and if we go and have a look at the way the clocks behave during the CPU test, you'll notice that the CPU was never pegged at 100% across all cores, so there's a lot of room for improvement there with this test. I'm not sure why that is, but maybe I can even push this CPU up to 4.1 and it might actually pass this test. Who knows, because it's not getting slammed 100%. So there we have it, ladies and gentlemen, a narrow win to Hot Fuzz. I was really quite surprised at how hard the R9 Fury swings, but then again, in synthetics, AMD cards tend to do a hell of a lot better than they do in games. The synthetic engines generally make better use of all the cores that the AMD cards have in advantage over their NVIDIA rivals. The real surprise to me was the outcome in the physics scores, which is based on the CPU. Under all core boost, the 2600X should be hitting around 4 to 4.1 GHz, so the clock speed difference isn't really all that much. Of course, Hot Fuzz at 4 GHz, the 2600X around about the same. The IPC increase is negligible, it's only around about 3%, but I think the real difference here is the RAM. Of course, Hot Fuzz is up to 33 MHz and it's using the C14 timings, whereas I'm pretty sure Chris's kit was running around the 16, 18, 18, 18 timings. So that could account for some of the difference there. I'm sure with a little bit of memory tweaking, you can pick up a little bit of score there. And with his new R9 Fury coming in with a working fan, maybe get a little bit higher clocks, maybe not. And maybe if also instead of using MSI Afterburner, maybe uses Global Wattman, it might actually allow him to change the HBM2 speeds. But you can see how close this really can be when he took out the Graphics 2 test scores. Many of you were probably thinking that the 980 Ti was just going to mop the floor with the R9 Fury, but anyone who's run AMD cards in synthetic benchmarks, you know different. Of course, the 980 Ti wasn't overclocked and it still has quite a lot of headroom, but I'm saving that for another day because it really wouldn't be a fair fight then. Maybe we'll see what the overclock benchmarks look like when Chris gets a hold of his Vega 56. That will be interesting because those things hammer in synthetics and I don't think I'll be winning that one. So a big thank you to Chris from The Good Old Gamer for the shout out for all of this, and it was a lot of fun and I really can't wait to see what he does in the future with this. So as much as this has kind of been a little bit of a personal video between me and Chris, then I thank you all very much for watching and stay tuned to see what sort of updates there are. Don't forget to like and subscribe over at Chris's channel, and yeah, we'll see you in the next one.
That.